Yeah, so I know it's been a while since we all last got together. We are excited to be approaching the end of this process. And so just to quickly remind everybody, I'm Rich. I am the Transportation Planning Director with NVCOG. This is Mark Nielsen. He is the agency's Assistant Director and has been working on this from the very beginning. And then online, we have Evan with AECOM, who is the consultant who's been doing work on this study. We will also be joined by Casey with AECOM, I believe in person here pretty shortly. And so
he'll be joining remotely.
He'll be joining remotely. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew he had a meeting that ended at 2, so I wasn't sure if he was still trying to come up or not afterwards. So, but he'll be calling in as well. He'll be on shortly. They have put a ton of time and effort into this project so far, so they have all the answers to the questions that you'll have. And I'm going to put Evan really on the spot here. So now if he doesn't have the answer, it looks like it's on him. So. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We will have a recording of this meeting. We'll share it with the town. We'll also put it on the NVCOG YouTube channel. I do not have a camera here for the room, so we will not be on video, but Evan is sharing his video, and of course, I'll share the slide deck. We will also make the slide deck available, and minutes from the meeting will get posted as well. All right, Evan, go ahead.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the introduction, Rich. And with that, I will start us out here. So this, as I said, is the future conditions presentation. It's based on a study on a document that we also submitted to NVCOG, but this is, the pared down version. So the agenda today is we're just going to give a little bit of background for the project. As Rich noted, it's been a little while since we've all met, and then the main focus I want to emphasize today is the initial concepts and cross sections, and give you all a sort of a high level view of what we're looking at in regards to which side the road is on, and then some of the traffic interventions. I should mention we're going to spend more time at the next PAC meeting looking at sort of the specific intersection related interventions we're looking at, and also the traffic analysis that goes with that. So this is which side of the road we're on, what facility we're looking at, and then the next PAC meeting will really delve into the traffic analysis at the specific intersections. And then number 3, we'll conclude with next steps, and of course we'd love to hear what you all think. So the timeline here of the project was pushed a little bit, but as of now, I've tried to highlight where we are. We have a TAC meeting and 2 PAC meetings in the summer of 2025. I mentioned this is the one of the PAC meetings, and then we're also going to spend some time on the traffic analysis and the intersection recommendations we're putting forward, and then there's going to be a public meeting in the later on in the fall, and then as you can see here on the bottom right, the final report will be finished in October-November time period. So we want to hear what you have to say now. Also at the next PAC meeting, we want to hear what the wider community has to say at the POM in the top right.
And if I can just interrupt real quick, the TAC meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee, so that is made up of CONDOT's traffic and project development staff. Route 6 is their road, it is their responsibility, and so we both want their approval on any proposed changes, but also want them to take on some of the work and make some of the improvements themselves. And so that's where that meeting comes in.
Yes, thanks, Rich. So, we first analyzed the entire corridor, looking at, what is the actual space we have? What is the canvas on which we, can work with, as it were? Obviously, we want to limit any suggested right-of-way impacts that we would have. We want to use public right-of-way to the extent possible. So we're looking at space for a shared path, and we're looking at factors like topography, of course, physical space, and then other constraints like utility poles, electrical poles. And then, of course, we want to connect to other facilities to the extent possible. Of course, we're going down one corridor, so there's limits to the, any changes in connection, but we do want to, ideally be on the side of the road, say, for example, that another facility would link to. What is a shared use path? I mean, the name is hopefully fairly self-evident, but it's a path, and it's sometimes called a side path, and it runs, it accommodates pedestrians, cyclists, and others in a shared space, or potentially through separated spaces, but usually it's a shared space. It's also sometimes called a side path when it runs parallel to a roadway. So if it runs parallel to Route 6 here, one could call it a side path, but we're going to try to call it shared use path for this project for ease of use. And so we really want to use the design principles to sketch out what this would look like. Shared use paths can have a pretty wide range in width. They can go from about 8 feet. That's sort of an absolute minimum. When you're constrained, you can, and ideally for a short period of time, you can have an 8-foot wide shared use path, and that still gives sufficient space for bicyclists and pedestrians, although they may have to slow down, of course. So you go from 8 feet to about 12 to 14 feet. Which is the ideal. The wider, the more users you expect, of course, the wider the path you would want. Paths can include a stripe 4-inch center striped area. And this, a yellow stripe, I should say. This is often used with heavy peak hour seasonal volumes. So we've looked around at this. We've looked at sort of comparable routes in comparable areas. We do not think that this is necessary for Woodbury to separate out bicyclists and pedestrians. So there's, generally speaking, also a horizontal separation of about 5 feet at a minimum, and a separation, I should say, between drivers and users of the path. This is not always achievable, and if you're in a constrained space, so you can use other factors like rumble strips or vertical barriers, for small areas, and that can achieve the same level of protection that a 5-foot offset would achieve. You can also use vegetation, and that's nice, especially in a town like Woodbury, where certainly the tree cover is so currently present, but also very valued now, and we want to protect that. So vegetation can also play that dual role of beautification and also providing that separation between bicyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. So here we're just going to, again, talk about these pedestrian bicyclist interactions on the shared use path. I mentioned in the previous slide, they can be divided with that yellow stripe down the middle. Again, this is not done though at the regional level. The Middlebury and Oxford Greenways do not use that center division lines because of lower volumes. And so, we looked at FHWA, the federal government has a shared use path level of service calculator from it's a little dated, but it's still used. It's from 2006, and it basically looks at volume. And if you have one-way volumes under 100 people per direction per hour, that's totally fine not to divide it. As you can see, as you get higher, then you start needing either a wider path or a divided path. And this is all not all or nothing, right? You can put a solid center line on right near corners where there's blind turns, stuff like that, near railroad crossings. And so we're going to strategically recommend providing those solid center lines where they're appropriate, but not generally. And like I said, we're not anticipating separating those users along the path. There would just be one path. So
yeah, Evan, sorry, there's a question here in the room.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
How do e-bikes play into this? Because e-bikes really go flying down the roads, down the sidewalks, and I'm not so sure that bicycles and pedestrians are going to comfortably get along in a shared use path with the way I've seen people using the e-bikes. Do you have anything right now that can help us with that, or that's still so new in this whole mix that we'll have to figure it out for ourselves?
There's some guidance, and I appreciate you bringing that point up. I'm going to look further into that guidance. It's still sort of being worked out at the state level and above, but it sounds like you have concerns about that. about their speed in
Sure.
particular.
It's a
It's a
very
good
fair
question.
question. And so we've been talking with towns across the region about the same question because it's coming up.
Well, and I raise it because I think in Woodbury, it's become very popular. We don't have good taxi service anywhere in the region, no buses and that kind of thing. So it is a good mode of transportation for many people. So I would like to hear more about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is new, and it's
Right.
something that we're wrestling with. We're working also on a Safe Streets for All planning study. We're having meetings with, all our municipal police force, get their idea of what safety concerns are. And they've raised that issue with the e-bike. And one of the issues is e-bikes right now are classified in three classes based on maximum speed that they can attain. The biggest issue that they're finding is that the e-bikes are easily modified, so that they can go a lot faster than what they're designed to. New recent state legislation addressed that. Is if the bike gets modified, it has to be labeled, things like that. But who enforces that? But that is becoming a big issue. Is that and it's becoming an issue because younger people don't have to get a license to use some of the e-bikes. And is that going to be, so they aren't familiar how to, ride on the road and this and that. Is that going to create some safety concerns going? Younger kids are going to be on an e-bike that can go 30 miles an hour and not really have the experience on how to handle it. And then you put it on a side path with people who are walking 3 miles an hour. That speed differential is the real cause of concern. Unfortunately, our roads sometimes can't handle the e-bikes either because we don't have the proper shoulder space and then intersections and so it's becoming an issue that we don't have a good answer for right now, but it is something that I think, Evan and ACOM are looking into. We're looking into it. It's going to be something we're going to learn all together.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone in solving the problem. We just don't have a good answer for it at the moment.
We see a lot of this.
Can I ask just one question? Do
Yeah.
you see a wide range of ages using them?
Yes.
Yeah, because in my town, it's been mostly younger kids, and that's where my concern sort of comes, is whether they're have the, I want to say maturity level, but that's maybe not the right word. Experience level of how to handle something. Because when they get modified, they become a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
We have one more
Yeah.
question?
No, I think the way answered it.
Oh, okay.
I thought the solid line was the direction, it's not separate pedestrian.
It can be either. So what he's really referring to is 4 directions. So you'd have a northbound and a southbound side. But we also can look at places where you anticipate really high volumes of either pedestrians or cyclists having separate facilities for them. Here, we don't always have the room to do that out on Route 6, and we don't think the volumes will be high enough to require it in a lot of places. So
Yeah, and if I could, to your point about e-bikes, it's helpful what you just said. I mean, we are going to try to provide as wide of a path as we can, especially in the central section of the corridor in the business district. So, if we can provide a 14-foot path, even 15 feet, and as needed, that should naturally help with e-bikes somewhat. Now, there's still the compliance issue, and I know we've had that same issue here in the city of Boston, where we had this Southwest Trail, and we have very high volumes of e-bikes, and they've put signs, they put even feedback signs to indicate when you're exceeding, I think it is 15 miles an hour. So that's another option. But again, to the main design goal we have is to be as wide as we can, and we hope that that'll naturally provide more space for people, especially in the congested downtown area. So I want to go through the right-of-way screening we initially did. We went up and down the whole corridor, looking at the parcel data in particular, but also other, street view data from Google and other data sources, topography data. And we went south to north along this corridor, and we rated, is there space for a shared use path as best we could see? We have, as you can see here, 5 different ratings: no, unlikely, possibly, likely, and yes, along each side of the corridor, east and west. The east side here is on the south. So as you can see here, in this southern section, it's a little bit better along the east side, largely because some topography issues, but also, perhaps more importantly, there's a lot of telephone power poles here on the west side, which would be difficult to route around and difficult to remove or replace. So that was a very important criteria here in the southern section of the corridor. Let me continue on. Here, moving into the center section, we also rated it. As you can see here, we're proposing that the shared use path would still be on the east side because it's on the whole is scoring better. And again, as I mentioned, there's on the west side, there's insufficient right-of-way caused by telephone poles, and in some areas, a culvert here. So as you can see here, I'm not going to go through all these points, but you can see here, I've just called out issues and some of the factors that are guiding which side of the road we're proposing to place this on. You can see here, it's not perfect. It's imperfect here on the east side, though I mentioned it was better on the whole on the southern side. Once you get sort of north of Hollow Road, we get to some issues on the east side, and the west side starts to become better in terms of space and right-of-way issues. So here we are moving north. Here's Washington Avenue, School Street, just to sort of orientate you. So here I was looking at the right-of-way, and here it looks like the west side would be preferable. So on the east side of town, the east side is superior, and then sort of near Hollow Park, the west side starts to predominate for being better. As you can see here, there's just more space for that shared use path on the west side than the east side. Again, we're sensitive to the historic needs of Woodbury. For example, on the east side of town here, there's the pharmacy sort of extends almost to the street, and there's a very limited right-of-way for a shared use path. So that's one of the factors, one of the sort of pinch points that encouraged us to go onto the west side, sort of through the heart of the town, and that's where we end up here. Here is the river and the end of the corridor here. So just as a general concept, we're proposing that shared use path on the east side in the southern part of town, specifically from the town border to Hollow Road, Doolittle Hill Road, Park Road area. At that point, it would transition over to the west side, cross the street with using a new crossing, and it would use the west side of the roadway through the central section of the town, through the business district, and all the way to the river. Now, we're also proposing major urban design improvements near Hollow Park to facilitate that crossing, but also to ideally make better use of that space now and boost access to that space. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later, and more specifically in our next meeting, what we're looking for at Hollow Park. And then we have other strategic intersection improvements, which we'll focus on more at the next meeting. So here's just a view of, we wanted to give you all a view of what this would look like in your town. So we took 2 specific locations. There's the first location is on that northern side of town, say between 317 and Mountain Road. When we're on the west side of town in sort of the business district, we show the existing right of way, and this is in feet, I should mention, and then we show the future right of way, what we're proposing. And this may take some time to look at, to digest a little bit, but as you can see here, we're using the same total right of way space, and we're just strategically taking space from what's a pretty big buffer here, grassed area and making a shared use path that's nicely buffered from the street, but also from people's homes. And we are narrowing out the shoulder on both sides and narrowing out the travel lane just a bit. We're still maintaining the 11-foot requirement from DOT, but we're just using that space a little bit more strategically, we hope. So that's in that northern section of town. And then when we're on the southern section of town, when we're proposing to be on the east side of the street, we do things that are broadly similar. We narrow the shoulder, for example. We narrow the travel lanes a little bit, and we provide that shared use path on the east side of town. And here we're talking about between Sherman Hill Road and Old Sherman Hill Road, more specifically at the Dollar General store. Here we have a narrower right-of-way of about 73 feet. But we feel like we provide a much safer facility and a much more beautiful facility than what's there now. It'll hopefully allow people to walk and bike and move around the southern part of town. So again, I just want to visualize this for all of you. And this has call-outs corresponding to the specific intersection recommendations that we'll focus more on at the next meeting. But here we are beginning at the town line, the southern town line, I should say. We go on the east side of Main Street. We would, for example, we propose to improve the crossing of Middle Quarter Road, adding PED signals, things like that, improving signal timing. So we hopefully improve safety, but also, to the extent possible, keep traffic flowing. Again, we're still on the east side, and then we would basically cross over near Hollow Road from the east to the west side. Here is that those proposed changes I talked about at Hollow Park. We're proposing at this sort of exit off of Main Street at Doolittle Hill Road, we're proposing closing access to cars, making sure we give land back to the park, reconstructing a sidewalk along Doolittle Hill Road into a sort of a small 8-foot shared use path and linking to an existing sidewalk. And then perhaps more dramatically, we were talking about realigning Hollow Road and directly connecting it to Route 6 with a more traditional traffic configuration, like a 4-legged stop or a signalized intersection. This would require reconstruction of the Woodbury Deli parking lot. So this is sort of the general design. We are trying to improve green space, improve, traffic function, but also take this advantage of this crossing to tie the town more tightly to Hollow Park, which we've heard many of you say is, a very treasured resource. We'd cross from east to west near Main Street at a mid-block crossing that would be likely signalized. And then again, we'd go on the west side of town north. And let me go on to the next slide. We'd be on the west side. We would propose to upgrade the crossing at Judson Avenue. That's something we heard is dangerous / uncomfortable. So we'd try to improve that crossing in particular. We'd be on the west side moving north using this extra right-of-way space here in front of people's homes. And then at Washington Road and Pleasant Street, we proposed to upgrade the crossing to accommodate that shared use path. One thing we heard is, there's issues at the pharmacy. We'd like to sort of define that area a little bit better. So we're proposing granite curbing and parking striping at that corner pharmacy parking lot, extending the sidewalk northward on the east side. So we're trying to strategically improve sidewalks as well as create the shared use path. And then we'd keep traveling north, crossing the river, and ending at Flanders Road, again on the west side of the town, or the west side of the road, excuse me. So I want to just sort of summarize the intersection concepts, and again, these will be brought up a little bit more in our next meeting. And we are doing traffic analysis. We're concluding traffic analysis for everything we're talking about here. So we'll at our next meeting we'll be able to tell you, definitively that this will have, X, hopefully very minimal impacts on traffic. But we're currently analyzing those operations at the following intersections, which are Route 6 and Middle Quarter Road. We were talking about narrowing the westbound approach for Middle Quarter Road, so sort of making it better for pedestrians and bikers, while also keeping traffic flowing. At the Hollow Road, Main Street area, we're talking about new signalized crossings, changing access points to the park. That was that intervention I talked about just a few minutes ago. At Route 6 and Sycamore Avenue, we're examining a new left turn lanes on Route 6. That's a concern we heard many times about people quickly going around into the shoulder area as people try to turn left. So we were thinking if we could provide a left turn lane there, that could significantly improve pedestrian safety. And then Route 6 and Washington Avenue, one thing we heard a lot was that, that right turn movement is difficult, and we're looking at, creating a new right turn from Washington Avenue onto Route 6, and then new left turn lanes from Route 6 onto Washington Avenue. So again, we're looking at the traffic for those.
Yeah, Evan, we have another question here in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Washington Road. It's not Washington Avenue. Washington Road is also known as Route 47. And I think that's critical because we do have a Washington Avenue, but that's the next road over, and that's for the schools. So if that slide could be fixed, because
absolutely,
because it's a state road.
Yes, absolutely.
And the other question, the general question I had before you go any further is, I know very early on, I was probably the one, and I don't know if anybody else was, I was wondering, we talked about these changes along Route 6. Is there consideration given to having one speed limit from the point of entry when you get to town to up to 6 and 61? Rather than, because there are different speed limits in certain parts of this busy section. Are we looking at one speed limit for this section to help improve the safety for those that walk and ride bike?
I think my suggestion would be that I think we'll probably handle that in the next presentation, where we focus a little bit more on what the roadway improvements look like. Because I think our thought process was to start with the side path, these corridor wide features. And then the next presentation is going to have some more detail of what that looks like at the intersections. And that would be a good time to sort of put it all together then and provide some recommendations about, establishing that more consistent speed limit.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Another question. So will follow-up presentations address pedestrian crossings across Route 6?
Yes. Yeah, so the idea was to kind of start with this corridor wide assessment and then follow up with more of the details at each of the intersections and driveways and those types of things.
Yeah, so just before we got too far into showing off drawings and specific intersection changes, we wanted to make sure you all agreed with the general alignment of the side path, because if there were going to be major changes at this stage, it made sense to address those before we get into each individual intersection.
The only other question I have, and it's a general question at this point, we have large vehicles in town, whether they be farm or trailers or tractors or semis or our emergency services vehicles. Are the changes that are going to be made allow them enough space for our first responders? In other words, are we going to squeeze down? Maybe we're going to say we're not going to have parallel parking on this side of the street because our first responders need to have that space, because in today's world, people don't seem to want to move when they have their sirens on, which is very unfortunate. So will that be taken into consideration as we look at these things? Because this is our main road and they spend way too many hours going up and down this road. dealing with people that don't want to get out of the way. And if we're taking some of that space away, my concern would be there might not be enough for them to comfortably make their way down the center.
Yeah, so that's part of
Absolutely.
that's part of this
Yep.
process too, is to make sure that the fire and police, everybody get a chance to look at it. But because it is a state road, they are going to, that is not something we even get the ability to mess with. And so
Okay.
it is definitely, we'll
They
be
get
looking at all
there,
of
they
that.
get to share and,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
absolutely.
okay.
So I'm understanding the lane widths will not be choked down. You'll maintain at least 11-foot lane.
Yes.
Or
We're-
west edge.
Yes. Yes, but the lanes are wider than 11 feet in some instances now, but we have to maintain 11 feet.
Do you have
Quick question about the Route 6 in Judson. That
Yes.
intersection also going to be adjusted?
At Judson Avenue? Yeah. I mean, we're looking at that. Was there a
We
specific?
kind of lost the end of the question. I don't know if you did, Evan, but I kind of lost the tail end of the question. Can you just re-say it?
Okay, trying to cross Judson Avenue while
Right.
walking on the west side of Route 6. Yeah, right where the, you have the picture is, it is,
Not on your bullet list, is what the question. Why isn't it on? the
Okay.
bullet list?
Yeah, I noticed that when I walked it myself. We want to right turning vehicles from Judson have the tendency to not stop, basically, or go through the crosswalk, sort of take it as a yield. So absolutely, we're looking to the extent we can, stop that movement, or make people stop as they're required to do.
And I
And
think
shorten-
as we,
okay, so that
crossing.
is. All right,
I
so
think
that
as
is
we look
part
at
of
some of
the-
the spot improvements, sorry, I'll just add one thing. I think as we look at the spot improvements, that intersection really flares out and the road kind of widens out to encourage that right turn movement. And I do think as we look at our spot improvements, we may be able to kind of better delineate the way Judson approaches. Right now, it's a glorified on-ramp. It's sort of just, it's naturally flaring. It gets wider around to the right and oh, gee, there's a crosswalk there and a stop sign. But every other clue tells the driver that they may as well just keep accelerating and join Route 6. So I think if we could look at, how that approach, maybe it's less of a turn in to merge Route 6. Maybe it's a little bit more squared up and just, forces more of that stop and turn right.
But thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, because of the alignment of the side path, it's going to pull that crosswalk back as well. Quite a bit, being a lot more visible.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Does the shared use pathway replace the existing sidewalk?
It's on that side, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it would be on the east side until it switches over to the west side. That would be the pedestrian.
Replace the existing sidewalk.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there are places where we'll still have sidewalk on the other side,
Yeah, cool.
but this would be yeah, exactly.
I can imagine a few places on the existing sidewalk, the tree right beside the side.
Mhm.
You have to have the shed, you fall on one side of the tree and to lie, go around the tree. You have to cut the tree down. What's the thinking about?
Yeah, I think we would, so some of those are questions we'll get addressed more in the design phase than here in the concept development phase. But our goal has been to minimize the impact to any trees that exist out there now. And
Yep.
so I don't know that we could split around the tree, although it's certainly something we could look at. But I think wherever we could, we would move the path around the tree rather than have to take the tree down for the path.
I should add in my right-of-way analysis, I did try to, note where there were tree issues and where we could go around them rather than cut them down, because I know that canopy is important.
Yeah, I think our goal would be in the actual implementation of this to add more trees in, certainly, and try and minimize any impact to existing trees. Please go ahead.
See that we go all the way to Flanders Road, right? And I'm hoping that the intersection there at Flanders and Route 6 is also going to be a foot on there, because that's a dangerous intersection, because people come so fast from Watertown, not realizing that there could be cars stopped or trying to leave Flanders Road and come onto Route 6. Also, all the way down to Classic Road, those people come from Watertown on Route 6, not realizing that they're all of a sudden they're coming into town. And it's always a little difficult also coming out of the Classic Road by the firehouse as well.
Sure. Yeah, one of the items we're looking at here too is some kind of like gateway treatment, something to tell you that you're no longer on a rural highway, but you are about to enter a town, and there will be pedestrians and there will be cyclists and there will be a lot more activity. And so we're looking at gateway treatments on both ends for exactly that reason.
And frankly, for that may actually be part of the reason to keep a difference in the speed limit, because if we are truly able to create a gateway that kind of has a character effect, that would be the natural place to introduce that reduced speed limit for the downtown area. So I think I think that's where those two aspects will merge together.
Can I interject here? What would be the standard width of the town roads at the intersections coming into the state highway?
They vary quite a lot. But
You can propose choking them down and making them more square. But there's a concern as a fire apparatus driver, because when I come down Route 6, say would be westbound, and I'm going to turn it to Judson Avenue, and there's 8 o'clock in the morning, there's 3 or 4 cars at the intersection coming to come out of Judson Avenue onto Route 6 with a piece of fire apparatus. If you close those intersections down too much, I will not be able to make the turn into Judson Avenue until all those cars. And if it's one car, it's not bad. But in the morning, if there's 4 or 5 cars waiting, it creates a little bit of an issue. So you are speaking of closing intersections up some.
Yeah, so
Yes.
because we're talking about a state road, we are going to need to, as we get into the actual design for what these look like, they have to be able to accommodate a 62-foot wheelbase every time. So no matter what, we can't get smaller than that.
Right.
But this is something that we'll want to revisit too, because obviously the last thing we want to do is make it so you can't get around.
Right.
We want to make the crossing safer, and looking at Judson, there's obviously some things that can be done there.
Right.
But none of that will impact your ability to get out and down. No, we appreciate it. That's why we need to do these meetings. That's what it's all about, making sure. So,
But that is one of the challenges for this corridor.
Yeah.
Since it is US Route 6, which is a principal arterial that runs, from Thomaston, Bristol to the north.
Well, it's like Cape
Cod. Keep going, yeah.
Provincetown to San Francisco, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking more locally, but what I mean, it goes, you can get to Route 8 in Thomaston all the way to 84 and Southbury. It's a major road. And it's the major access point for the town of Woodbury. If you don't have any, no other interstate goes through expressway. So how do you balance the needs of the town center with the needs of, a lot of through traffic? But to your point, whenever we do anything, designers and engineers will look at required turning radii, for large trucks and emergency vehicles and such. And anything that is redone will meet those requirements. The idea is that in a lot of locations, those radii are more than what's really needed for anything.
Right.
And if we can not narrow them down, tighten them up a little bit, it benefits everybody.
And to your point, we're in a broader sense, we're having our traffic engineers look at all of this right now. So even if it could pass muster with the truck movement, we also want to make sure that it doesn't have significant impact on general traffic flow. So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
okay.
I'm on the zoning.
Okay.
commission.
Sorry, Evan, you have one more.
Absolutely.
I'm on the zoning commission, and several years ago, we approved a project, an apartment up near Flanders Road. So a lot of that information and a lot of those concerns about traffic coming from the north into town, we had to take into consideration. And we asked for some additional traffic studies. So that information would be on record in the land use office and probably up at the state. But there was a lot of good information on speeds coming into town, accidents at that intersection. So that might give you a head start when you look at addressing that gateway entrance about.
What year?
I don't remember. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay, so that's
Recent.
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 Okay. That's great to know.
All right, any other questions before Evan moves on from here? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to go through these next few quickly. We have a map here. We put this into CAD and sort of mapped everything with the parcels to get a more granular view. And as you can see here in red are areas where there's pinch points or right-of-way issues. And we also have, where there'd be topographical need for a wall. So in terms of impact, there's potential impacts near the southern town boundary at Schuylkill Road and north of Middle Quarter Road. And then here in this next sheet, as you can see here, we've also mapped the possible impacts. I won't go through them individually, but just so you can see the type of analysis that was conducted. So here's where I really want to show what this could look like for your town at those two aforementioned locations. So here's the location near Drakeley Real Estate, just north of 317 Sycamore. I want to show you, there's pretty narrow sidewalk, limited parkway space on the east side of the road in sections. There's a lot of space here on the west side. So that's the existing condition, what it looks like now, and you can see we sort of create an animation for what it looks like now. Let me go on to the next. Not sure why it's. Oh, I'm sorry.
So we were seeing it there.
Oh, okay. Here, sorry, skipped. Here's the future conditions. So again, this is on the west side. We're looking northward, and we're proposing that shared use path of 12 to 14 feet. And we feel that we keep the telephone poles. We don't have to do a huge amount of intrusion there, but we provide that nice space on the west side of the town while maintaining the sidewalk on the east side. We are aiming here for, again, 12 to 14 feet if possible, because this is really the center of the town, near the community center, near the library, et cetera. So maybe more helpfully, we want to show you what this looks like at the street level. Again, at the same location near 317 Sycamore. Here we are looking southwest, and this is the existing condition. Many cars. There's a walking space, but it's limited. And then this here shows what it could look like. Hopefully, provide a lot more space for bikers, people on foot, scooters, etc. And we feel like that would be quite helpful. So let me go to this next spot then, here on the southern section of town. This is.
Hold on a second, Evan.
Absolutely, yep.
I'm a pain in the tail, I'm sorry. But back to the picture that you have of Drakeley, just south of that, there's a rather healthy parking area that's used by the church and people for functions. What happens to that if this were to happen? Does that go away and that then become an extension of that shared use?
I think we were planning that it would jog out around it. I think as admittedly part of part of the answer is that's part of kind of what these spot improvements will help us figure out. But I think our assumption here was not necessarily to take that away, and that we might just route the side path essentially following the curb line. So like you can see where that car's parked. Maybe you could point at it, Evan.
Yeah.
The one that's, you know, it would sort of be routed to the right of that, I would assume.
Yes, that was the plan. We have a pretty wide right of way here. So, and we've heard that that's an important parking area. So that was the intention, is to keep it. But
One
maybe
thing we had
more,
talked
maybe,
about was-
yeah.
Sorry, it was trying to define the parking there. I know one of the things we
Exactly.
heard when we were out walking was that residents will park totally perpendicular to the road, but visitors often will park at an angle. And so if we can stripe spaces in there somehow and tell people what they're supposed to do, that may
Delineation,
help
yeah.
solve some of that problem. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people use it. We've heard from police and others as a right turn lane too. So we would want to define it better, but we'd want to keep it.
They turned us down for just putting the zebra stripes back in so that you could play the game that's being played right now with the freeway to make that right-hand turn and not make a stop. So, not sure what the answer is there, but it's a freeway.
I think the state would have a because they didn't do an intersection design analysis, they were simply doing a signal vision there.
Yeah, but they weren't gonna allow anything, even temporary, so.
Not that their original plan had.
Yeah.
Not when it's been shared.
We're hopeful that when we bring this to them, that they'll see the full intersection concept and agree to the more significant improvement. Mhm. And we actually will talk a little bit when we get into the next PAC meeting about some possible temporary or demonstration type improvements, things that can be done in the short term. Mhm. Was there another question?
No, it's just that whole intersection has been not gonna get answered here.
Oh, sure.
It's not done yet either. It's not done.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll be back.
All right, Evan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to move now onto the southern, more rural section of town near Dollar General that we've already talked about. Here we're looking north in this image. We have a pretty wide right of way on the west side here, as you can see. But again, we have telephone poles there, and there's some other topographical issues. The east side, where there's an existing sidewalk of about 5.5 feet, is already present, but it has an existing slope there, as you can see. So that's the existing condition right now. These lanes are 12 and 13 feet, respectively. So what we do is, we narrow the lanes a bit, narrow the shoulders, and create a wide 11 to 12 foot shared use path up here on the east side, which would allow all sorts of people to walk. We've heard concerns that people are using this area to walk, to the Dollar General or even points north from where they live to the south. And so we feel like this would provide a nice, comfortable shared use path for them on that east side of town. And I just want to visualize it at the street level. There wouldn't be a huge narrowing of the roadway, but a modest narrowing of the roadway. And now in the future, more people could bike, families could travel together, people could walk, more people could walk, scooter, etc. So that's the general concept in that southern portion.
You have a comment here in the room?
One more
Oh,
comment here.
yes.
Based on zoning, when we approved the Dollar General several years ago, somehow their requirement to put a sidewalk on their side of the road was not insisted on. And going forward, for any other new developments, because I know there's maybe some new businesses coming to town, some other places might be being revamped. I think this would fall on Will to look at all of that to make sure when we do these things, they do have to put those sidewalks.
Part of this plan is to show that we have a plan.
So
Wow.
we don't want that to happen again.
Right.
Yeah, fair.
Absolutely.
There is no way of getting from this nothing you to upline to John Tolagena. Zero, right? Yeah, well, the problem, yeah, the thing was that some of the sidewalk they weren't gonna need because they were never gonna get the bridge on the west side going toward Middle Quarter. But they could have got some, I think, going north into Roberts, but.
But that is a good point. We'll take a look at that. Make sure.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
can actually get where they need to go. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So, and you know, finally, we want to conclude by noting that this is, when we did this analysis, and certainly in the final report, we're going to emphasize and study how this can connect to existing and planned shared use paths in the region. So there's the Middlebury Greenway, there's Oxford Route 67 shared use path. There are coming shared use path investments in Southbury, starting with New Wheeler Road. So, you know, to the extent we can, to the extent that they're somewhat close, we want to create this shared use path in such a way that it can tie into those. You know, perhaps the most obvious connection is the first one, and how to tie that in on 64. But we feel like we have by, for example, putting it on the east side of Route 6. So that's an easy connection right there. But this is part of an overall network in the region. And so we want to assure you that we are considering that. So to conclude, you know, we're proposing that the shared use path will be placed on the east side in the south of the town. We're avoiding those telephone pole relocations, other large impacts that would be expected. Near Hollow Park, we transfer that onto the west side of town, west side of the road. We'd serve that main commercial portion of your town. We'd avoid some right-of-way limitations near Pleasant Street, near the pharmacy. And then connected to that, connected to moving east to west, we would propose some urban design access improvements near Hollow Park, which we feel like would tie the park more strategically to the center of the town. And then we sort of touched on it. We're going to spend more time on it in the next meeting, but we'd have some strategic road realignment, signal configuration that we plan to recommend in this plan. So I just wanted to bring the next steps for you, for the PAC, up here so we all can reorient ourselves. As mentioned, there'd be that second PAC meeting where we'd really delve into the specific intersection changes we're proposing, any traffic impacts of those. And that would be the focus of our next PAC meeting, with continuing analysis related to those intersection concepts. And with that, we want to take your, I mean, we've heard some helpful thoughts already, but we're all ears for any feedback you may have for the general concept.
Great. Go ahead, Bill.
So dealing with the general concept, I know they're going to the intersections, but also continues path. One of the observations from my perspective is that there's a big difference between the one that's in Middlebury and the one that's in Oxford. They both do what they need, but the aesthetic in Oxford, at least from my perspective, looks like it's totally inconsistent with where it is. I mean, it looks like it's a giant thing shoved right down in the middle of the property. No, it's very limited right away, but that's, I think, key to all this is the aesthetic as well, because not only do you want a path to walk on, but you want to enjoy where you're walking, and you want it to be related to the things on either side, whether it be the road, businesses, or a house. So I think that's key, and I don't know what's built into this or can be built in, kind of focus also on the aesthetic, because I think that makes it more inviting.
Yeah, I think to that point, right? The reason people are coming here and the reason that this is important is because of the aesthetic of Woodbury and what you have to offer already. And the last thing we'd want to do is take away from that with this. This is a great opportunity to look at where can we add trees and vegetation, where can we do those gateway treatments and other signage that is relevant to the town and fits in with what's here already. And have this really, build on the character that's here now.
I'm in agreement with them, but I think 12 or 14 feet is going to really ruin the aesthetic of town. You know why? I mean, we do need sidewalks, but that's going to look like South Park to me. And that's commercialized.
And again, I think that's where the balancing act comes in. Because again, what Evan was presenting is sort of the desirable current standard type of design. And as you get into the more, on the ground and what this would look like, yeah, maybe you don't do 12, 14 feet, it's 10 feet or something like that. Maybe, you do something, some paved, some soft, things like that. So again, what they're presenting now is sort of a general initial concept. It's going to take this group and us, to start, they're listening. They're listening to what everybody's saying. And, this is a collaborative process where, we're not just, NVCOG's not doing this and with AECOM, and we're going to present you, this is what we're doing. It's like, no, this will be a collaborative effort to come up. Because aesthetics are essential. It has to fit into the context of the community.
And everybody's there to clean it.
So are you gonna be adding crosswalks?
There will be,
You're asking for these walkways on,
Well,
Dollar General, you can't cross there.
Correct.
You can't cross to the Shell station or to the building next door. So you're putting these great walkways in, but the businesses are on the wrong side of the street.
right. And so that is also part of this, is identifying where crosswalks should be put in. And if they are put in, they're put in at the highest and best.
One death in front of the Shell station because somebody was crossing without a cross.
Right.
Nobody crosses that Dollar General.
And
You're gonna have businesses, put them where
Right.
the people want to
And
go.
they need to be high visibility type crosswalks, so that if somebody goes into it or walks on the crosswalk, they're seeing, they know, the drivers know that they're at a crosswalk, so there's pavement markings, there could be advanced warning signs,
The worst thing you do is put in a crosswalk that goes nowhere and no one's going to.
well, we try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Can I ask one other question?
Yes.
You live in New England. Who's responsible for winter maintenance on this? Is this another burden on town taxpayers? Or the residents gonna clean up 12 to 14
Technically,
sidewalk?
ordinance where in the winter.
Or is it gonna be like Middlebury, where there is no winter maintenance on the walkways and the signs are set there?
Well, as I said, there is an ordinance which requires the residents who live in front of a sidewalk to clear the sidewalk. However, it's not always done. We have a lot of renters who do not read the ordinances, who do not do that work. And then the town will go out and they expect the town to do it all the time. And we don't have the manpower to do that. So it's a very good point. Very good point you bring up, Doug. I also would like to mention that please work with DOT so that we don't do the same things over and over again and rip up. This intersection right here is still not right. And I expected DOT to be back this summer. Summer's almost gone and they're not here yet. Neither is Route 317 being mill and paved. But please talk to the DOT, because whether they will even allow some of these intersections to be tampered with, I don't know.
Yeah, so we,
You've worked with DOT more than I have. My experience has not always been good with the DOT.
yeah, we can relate. So they've done reviews of all of this work so far, and we have a project manager at DOT who's been working with us on this from the beginning.
Okay, good.
And to the point about winter maintenance, so we've seen effectively every variation on this. So some towns make the very conscious decision to let it be unmaintained in the winter and use it for snowshoeing or for winter activities. Some towns just close it in the winter. Towns where it goes through an urban center or some kind of a town center like this, And there are rules where residents are required to clean it. Some have decided that they are required to clean 5 feet. So they have to clear what would be the equivalent of a sidewalk, but not the full 12-foot pathway or whatever it might be. Or some say they have to clear the whole thing. And so really that's a, you know, that's
Well,
a
I'll go back to that
consideration.
one. So if you were to, say, we're only gonna clear 5 feet of it, and you have a 12 to a 14-foot pathway, you have, it's not gonna be a true level pathway. So if which do you clear, the higher 5 feet or the lower 5 feet? And then you get winter thaws and freezes. Now it becomes a major ice condition because you're not cleaning the higher part of it. You can't just say we're gonna clean 5 feet of it. You're either cleaning all of it or none of it, because it won't work.
And again, I
And
think,
Kathy does a lot of, I see her walking every day. And would you like to walk on an icy sidewalk every day and barely clean that?
The last time it happened, just a week before they got rid of the block of ice, and they had to do it with the backhoe. So I guess it
This
was
is
fun.
gonna be a town issue, not this study.
but again, I think the issue with maintenance is you need to sort of start thinking about what this side path is intended to do and who it's intended to serve. It's not just a sidewalk, it's well, my opinion, a transportation corridor. Like it is an extension of a local road, an extension of a state road. It is not just a, pedestrians. So that's how you have to view it. And then I think it's going to be more of a local issue on how it is maintained in the future. And it is a question that needs to be decided. The city of Derby, they plow the greenway they have. That's their decision. They keep that nice and, maintained during the winter.
Probably have a bigger crew too, maintenance.
Yeah, I don't know. They have something. But again, I think they decided that many, many years ago. So it's just continued to be part of it. But it's 2 miles in length. So it's not an insignificant greenway. So, but again, that's something that has to be considered. It can't be ignored.
Yeah.
Regarding the proposed east side sidewalk going to the southern section of Woodbury, in your slide, you showed a metal car barrier. Was that a boo-boo? Like you're not gonna put a metal barrier along the road like they did in Southbury on the way down to Southbury near the Rochambeau Green, which is sort of unsightly.
I mean, this one here.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
is showing what's there currently. I think we can look at options that look better in our
Yeah,
work.
the metal barrier is pretty unsightly for kind of.
Okay.
Now, and I will be the voice of pessimism, because it is a state road. What you can put along their road is going to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have a situation in Waterbury where we go real nice section of the greenway. And the city wants to add some kind of like wooden railing because cars are parking on it. They won't allow it.
Wow.
So again, this is something that we need to sort of voice an opinion, voice a concern and raise it early so we can, instead of having the metal guardrail like you see there, maybe there's some kind of wooden barrier that separates, or do you decide, do we have enough buffer that we don't need any kind of a guardrail if we find it?
Evan,
straight
can you
section
turn
road?
around?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
so the
it-
dilemma here is that the rail's there for the bridge and the rail has to then end somewhere. So it's sort of like the rail is only there because the road crosses the bridge there. In a normal situation, it's not like the rail's there to separate the road from the side path. This is sort of a unique situation. We could maybe look at whether it needs to run back as far or yeah, that's a good point. I completely understand the aesthetic concern.
That would change because they're all federal standards. They're not state standards, they're federal standards. And they won't change.
Yeah, and they really don't, I mean, like the wooden guide rail, which was designed basically to be put in on the Merritt Parkway, I've worked with a couple of municipalities that have tried to push for the wooden guide rail. The state really is against it, and it's because of how hard the replacement parts are to procure. That's sort of the general line on it. And then, for years we did used to be able to do the weathering steel guide rail. But that really has kind of, there were a few strength tests done in these wintry climates. It does tend to lose some strength, when you get the big snow packs piled up against it all winter. So it's kind of, unfortunately from an aesthetics perspective, it's kind of the metal beam rail or nothing. And so what kind of it leads us to do is to minimize the need for it wherever we can. And that's to try to, push the slope shelf back as far as we can. And then all we need is the wooden pedestrian fence that you see in the background. That looks better.
Yeah.
There are little guardrails that have less profile too, but. And I don't know when they decide when one is good, one is.
But right now, there is a standard, getting back to the federal standards, that when you're going over they have to meet a certain crash criteria. So it is what you have to put in. I think what Casey's point is, they can look at where you. Yeah, what you're saying here with the bridge, they have.
This isn't a need. I just know that there are other galvanized guardrails designs
The weather
that have
of
a smaller profile.
Yeah.
Yes,
They have to be RB 350 mesh standards.
Yeah, I know that, but it doesn't, there are other profiles that are.
There are not.
There's a box profile.
Okay. You'll see.
We have a question in the back and then, go ahead.
And I noticed that you talk about Southbury and Middlebury, which is part of New Haven County. Woodbury is Litchfield County, and 90% of this driving is historic district. And one of the things that people love about Woodbury is the small town charm, like Washington and Roxbury. We're kind of on the edge of this, and I hope that you are considering thoughts from the historic district as well, permission. Because I think that we don't want to lose that for our real estate, and we don't want to lose that. I know a lot of people say, oh, I come into Woodbury, it reminds me of Vermont. Where else do you find that? It's a small, wonderful little town. You have to be careful that we don't become metropolitan look.
Yeah, for sure.
So I echo that too. Also, I'm skeptical from a maintenance perspective, going all the way back to Kathy's original point. Like a wide pathway, you're inviting the teenagers and others of the town to drive 35 miles an hour or as fast as that they can go down, honestly. I think a ADA compatible sidewalk for them for the town would be a much better perspective from my own perspective. I also sit on the board of finance, so I'd be interested in what the cost per yard, per 100 yards or whatever, of the different options are, where everything that's going to come from. And it's my own personal interest, maybe other people don't care. Would it increase the cost to put the telegraph wires underneath the pathway throughout the town?
Yeah, very much so.
Several orders of magnitude, yes, maybe 2.
There's no question, it is nicer to not look at the utility poles, but the costs are generally prohibitive to do
Going
so.
back to the original meaty question, what's the cost per yard, per 100 yards? And I mean, are you envisioning town base for that? The grants, I mean, that's, I think, pretty considerable. And I'm guessing like $2 or $3 million.
Yeah, I would imagine the town is not going to pay for it out of capital improvements. A good chunk of this we're going to push to DOT to try and make a lot of the intersection and roadway improvements. Again, back to it is their road and they are responsible for it. And then, towns like Oxford and Middlebury have been using grants to pay for the work on their side paths. Yeah, and so we'll have in here some estimated costs and some options around that. But one of the things, even when this study is done, is we're still here because we want to help see this get implemented And we know that no town is going to be able to build this just out of their own capital funds. Oh, yeah, yes, go ahead.
Sort of related, but not really about the site, about the pad, the shared path, but Route 6 itself, the asphalt. I remember several years ago, they put some experimental topping over it, and it seems to look good and stand up. Has there been any follow? Have you heard any follow up on like, yeah, this is great, it's working, or is it nothing's ever come back on that?
We can look into that though.
And in the future, if they're going to repave, are they going to use this, whatever it was, rubberized? Or are they gonna have to go back with traditional?
Yeah, I'll look into what they put down and see if it's what the current standard
Because
is.
it may or may not affect the crosswalk. It'd be nice to have all the same material, and who knows what they're gonna be planning to do. But I've never heard, ever since they did that, whether it's steps or not.
Yeah, it's a great question though. We'll look into it and let you know.
What do you mean by gateway treatments at each end? You talked about gateway treatments, but I have no clue what conceptually that means.
Yeah, Casey, do you wanna?
Yeah. So it's sort of a combination of visual effects to help transition drivers from the more rural, spread out, higher speed sections north and south of here into town. And that usually takes a combination of things. It's some kind of subtle change to the roadway character that could be more plantings in the buffer between the side path, sort of increasing the level of density. There's already that natural increase as the buildings start to get denser. But I think so what we'd like to do is build in both a combination of like vegetation and some signage that's, you know, sort of envision like a welcome to Woodbury plaque, sort of. So as you're approaching the area where we want the drivers to slow down, as they approach that area, we're going to hit them with some sort of visual, like, oh wow, I'm in a different area now. I just noticed all these trees, and there's a couple signs welcoming me to downtown Woodbury. Okay, this is okay. I should slow down. I'm not just ripping down Route 6 anymore.
So the potential is.
And we have some diagrams that we could share as well, I think, in the future.
Yes.
The potential is there to have to do something like that at 6 and 317, 6 and 47, and 6 and 64, and 6 and 61, because people come flying in from some of these intersections, or they come
Well,
flying.
and that's the other way to catch them too, is we have to catch the people on Route 6, but you raise a very good point that all those people on the major intersecting state roads, we kind of need to introduce that fact to them as well. So that's a good point to think about, the gateway needing to touch on those roadways as well.
Yeah, and I have some hesitation as a resident about sharing my space to walk with the bicycles. Not as much the manual bicycles that you use your own power to go, but the electric bikes, because I've had enough experiences with them at all different hours in town, and you just can't control them. And if they should lose control, then they should fall, then we fall, and it's going to hurt. It's going to be a problem, and so I have hesitation. I know they're here to stay, but sharing the road with them, I don't know. Not sure.
Do you see them on the sidewalks today or?
Oh my goodness, both places, and they're flying. I mean, I watched somebody the other day go faster than the car that was going down Route 6.
The way it is now, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
We don't follow the traffic. We always had two kids that got run over down 6 and 64 because the light turned red, and they just kept going like they were cars. The cars started moving on the two, and they had no thought.
Yeah, and it's not just the young kids. There are adults. The older adults tend to be a little better, but there's all different ages using them, and I'm not comfortable right now. And not only are they flying past us on the sidewalk, and we don't move over to them, they're flying up people's yards, and here go people's yards and the vegetation they have. Yeah, but the state put an article out the other day that said it's shared space for everybody. We all have to learn to get along and the bikes have to give way to the pedestrians. Well, they don't. So for me, that's a concern I have right now, and I don't know that that.
Well, it's a valid concern because I've had residents come into the office. A woman who just had hip surgery and exercise was walking.
Yep.
And she almost got knocked down by, on Mountain Road by,
Oh, wow.
an e-biker.
So I have mixed feelings on it.
Forever, or Jacksonville, Wyoming has been dealing with this for a while, and they're still dealing with it with more research. There might be something online for you to look at to help you out in some way.
Yeah, we need.
Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
Jacksonville?
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
Wyoming, yeah. Big tourists.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's dealing with the school children because they're allowing them to use the pads.
Yeah.
But it's freeing up the parents from driving to school because of the.
And that happened on
close.
many times.
Yeah.
And that helps. And at the same time, they're educating them and it's starting to help and they're seeing where it's demographically working in the school system. So it's a work in progress and they're having their pros and cons, but they've been dealing with it for a while. So
Yeah,
heads up.
and to that point, it's not an issue that the state has identified and is ignoring. There's groups like Watch for VCT and the Safe Routes to School program at ComDOT. They are trying to work on it.
Yeah.
They're one of the big pushes right now is to try and get more bike education into schools, especially at a younger age, just to help get ahead of this. It's one thing when a kid at least generally knows the rules, but chooses not to follow them. But a lot of kids just don't even know the rules to start with here. And so that is a challenge that the
I would like to see
DOT is
businesses
working on. Yeah.
that sell these bikes hand a piece of paper to the parents.
Yeah, that's a great
and
idea.
say, this is what you have to follow now.
Yeah, but again, I think the problem I'm saying is that this proliferation of e-bikes is just moving so quickly.
Yes.
We're having a hard time adjusting and it's going to take a little time to catch up. And quite honestly, I'm not sure what the answer is going to be because I think e-bikes are more similar to a car than a regular bicycle. Bicycles.
It's almost like a motorcycle.
Yeah, and when I used to ride a bike a long time, and you had more control. You could slow down easier, or you couldn't go as fast and for as long.
15 miles an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
But and that's the problem I see with the younger kids in my town is, I feel like you slap them upside the head and say, get on a bicycle. But no, but it is, and it has been, it gives them freedom to move, and I can understand that. But yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to deal with it, but we'll work
We
on
have
it.
to live together.
Yeah.
But even if there weren't e-bikes,
Both ways.
somebody who bikes on the road, like I do, you don't want a narrower shoulder.
Right.
Like you saw that video of the semi going by, and those of you who bike on the road know, boy, semi gets a little too close. It's scary.
The place, with the wind.
So now you have to decide, am I gonna bike on the shared use path with pedestrians and slower bikers and, or am I gonna go on a road that has a narrower shoulder than I used to?
Then we try to turn around the pothole, now you don't have the wheel.
You don't have the.
No.
And you're on the road.
Yeah.
But
Hold on, Mark.
Casey, I was just asked Casey about the shoulder widths. Are you narrowing any of the shoulders? You're going to try to maintain a proper shoulder?
No, well, so we want to maintain a proper shoulder, but there
Yeah.
are places where the roadway is a little overly wide. I mean, there's places where the lane width is like maybe 14, 15 feet, and then you've got like a 6 or 7 foot shoulder. So there are some places that we are seeing opportunities, especially for some of those sections of the corridor where the right of way isn't quite as wide, where there is an opportunity to sort of arrive at a roadway that's a little bit better defined at 11 foot, 5 foot lane and shoulder widths, where that may actually give us a little bit of tightening, but we would still keep a full shoulder width.
Yeah, so to your point, I think, that's not going to be, so a bicyclist who's staying on the road will still have probably a minimum of 4 feet of shoulder width to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think we would narrow the shoulder down to 2 or 1 foot, because you still want to maintain, you know, that kind of breakdown lane for snow, you know, and just bypassing, or if there's a car that gets breaks down or something. So I think I just.
There's a drainage issue too, because it's an arterial, so you can't have any ponding into the travel lane. So it actually is helpful to have the shoulder width from, you can end up with a few less catch basins that way too.
I want to understand at the next meeting, will you be coming back with something more detailed about what you want to do with
Yes.
Hopple Road
So
and Route
next-
6? I really like the idea that we're going to try to do something there, as long as it includes a crosswalk for those that are on one side to cross to go down. It's such a busy road, and to have everybody stop and slow down, I think would be very, very helpful. So you're going to talk more about that next time and the other intersections?
Next time I anticipate us sort of working our way through the corridor with some more detailed drawings, kind of illustrating intersection by intersection, how, we've sort of now come to this, all right, so here's generally where we think the side path fits. And then, so next time it will be at those challenging intersections, giving a representation of what it would look like.
And you'll also be putting in where you might propose some crosswalks. I know we mentioned earlier.
Crosswalks and new left turn lanes. It's the biggest additions at these intersections you'll see will be the crosswalks, how we facilitate the side path and recommend safe crossing for that, but then some left turn lanes as well. In many of the signalized intersections, we don't have that. And even if the volumes are relatively low, it is actually a good safety improvement to evaluate those as well.
And would that also include crosswalks? Let me give you an example, Middle Road Turnpike, because that's the road that leads to the high school. At some point, knock on wood, someday, the town will be fortunate enough to slowly work our way and put a sidewalk at some point, getting us at least from Middle Road Turnpike up to First White Deer Rock, and then work our way forward. But would there be something there so that when the kids that walk down from the high school and cross over, they have a safe place to stand before they cross to get to the sidewalk that's on the other side? Or you have to stay away from that?
Yeah, no, I think that would be an applicable place. I mean, I guess the question we might have is whether it might make more sense to wait. Well, so I'm looking at Middle Turnpike and I can see what we call kind of a goat path. And so it looks like there's actually a decent amount of people that may kind of stand there and cross the road anyway. So I think the question would be, do we wait to do that until there's a sidewalk to connect to or not? But we're happy to take a bit of a closer look at that. But I can absolutely see your point. And I mean, it looks like there's people doing the crossing now. So I mean, it could actually maybe warrant an unsignalized crossing today.
I guess I'm asking because I know you're working on this plan with the state of Connecticut. And as someone who sits on the Shade Tree and Sidewalk Committee, anything we want to do with crosswalks or trees or anything, we go to the state. But if it's a crosswalk that's already put in as part of this plan, then when we go to develop that sidewalk from Middle Road Turnpike, let's say up in White Deer Rock, that piece of the puzzle has already been technically approved as part of the state plan, and we wouldn't have to go back to them to get that piece put in. That's one of the reasons I'm asking, because.
So what we could do no matter what is include in like a long-term plan. Like I'm looking at the site. The sight lines look fine. I don't really see any reason that we couldn't recommend an unsignalized crosswalk here. And what we could do is, depending on how some of the discussions go with the state about it, we could either frame it as, hey, in the long term, there should be a crosswalk here once it's connected to the sidewalk. Or we might say, you know what, put it in now, and we have it as the initial plan. But I think to your point, we can make sure that we include sort of in these initial drawings to the state, the idea of a crosswalk here so that it's not new news when you guys want to go put it in.
Did you dismiss the idea of having a traffic signal at that intersection? At the moment, I think a lot of people don't.
I won't pretend to have the traffic signal warrants memorized, but I think the answer is no.
Yeah, it's not going to be.
I mean, I don't think it would qualify for a warrant.
Yeah.
There's not enough traffic coming off, you know.
So there's a list of criteria that we have to hit.
Take a look at it, but it's not going to meet the state of work.
And so the challenge there is the state will refuse to pay for any unwarranted signals, which means then the full cost of that would be on the town if you were to pursue it. The signals, just to add the signal itself without the intersection improvements is a little more than $1 million right now.
Well,
So-
and they would have to approve it too as part, I mean, theoretically on a state road, they'd have to like actually approve it too. And the fear would be they may not approve it because it may reduce operations on Route 6 and being unwarranted, et cetera.
Yeah, right. In addition to the cost, because they own the road.
We
the town
could look at a
needs permits.
signalized pedestrian crossing though. Like it could be,
Yeah.
that could be worth evaluating, but the truth is that also has a relatively high threshold that, I mean, they're gonna say they want whatever it is, 50 pedestrians in the peak hour, and we're gonna look around at each other and like, where are those people gonna come from? But we'll take a look at as part of the spot improvements.
An organized civics class while they're out there watching.
Yeah.
Go walk across a couple times.
Have you looked
Yeah,
into-
we'll do another road safety audit when we have the count day.
Any of the side roads coming in, have you looked into making some of those one way or no left turn?
Good question. We did talk about that at one of the walks. We talked about, coming by the hollow, by the Woodbury Deli, making that to right hand turn only. And then it was talked about by the old town hall, making that a one-way deal. So it was talked about last summer when you were here doing the walk. Those two, and there might have been another one that we looked at as well.
We can circle back on that and maybe offer a wrap-up slide on that. I don't know that any of those in some of our discussions proved overly promising. I know we did down at Hollow Road, instead of making anything right in, right out, we were thinking of realigning Hollow Road and kind of bringing it in to align with Park Road.
Making a more traditional intersection there.
Yeah. Right in, right out is promising. I mean, although the truth is we don't see that. It's not like we see a super high number of angle collisions where it seems like people are really having trouble making a left onto Route 6. Now, if you guys, with your user experience, have a lot of near misses to talk about, we'd be happy to hear. But we typically make those recommendations when we're seeing a lot of or more angle collisions than we'd like, when where it's clear that people just don't have the gaps to make a left turn. Then we would go ahead and convert roads to right in, right out. But we aren't actually seeing that from a crash perspective.
Right. Well, thank you all for being here today, for all the time. We really appreciate the feedback. We'll be in touch about the next meeting. We're looking at a couple weeks away for the next meeting, and then the public meeting will follow that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Evan and Casey, thank you both.
Yeah, thank
you guys. Sorry we couldn't be there.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
See you, Mark.
Thank you.
Be well.
Evan,